It's time now to take a look at the international papers with Elena Casas. Hello, Elena. Now, what are the papers making of that primary result here for the Socialist Party and François Hollande winning that vote?
Hello again, Claire. Well, François Hollande has got himself onto a lot of front pages outside of France, so it's clearly provoked a lot of international interest. Here he is on the front page of the Wall Street Journal. That was taken at Rue de Sovrino, Socialist headquarters, last night. And on the front page, Wall Street Journal celebrates the French left choosing Mr. Normal, saying he's the perfect foil to Nicolas Sarkozy's bling-bling presidency. He's also in here, in the Spanish paper El País. They say he's the candidate of compromise. They actually call him the king of compromise in their editorial, saying that over the 11 years he was head of the Socialist Party, he's managed to work out exactly how all the party's different warring factions tick and how to reach a consensus between them. So they think that's why he's won. He's the candidate of consensus, they say.
OK, so moving on now to the Occupy Wall Street protest. They've been going on for quite a few weeks now and they're still making headlines.
Yes, there were big demonstrations in London, Rome, Madrid and Berlin at the weekend, so they're on an awful lot of front pages. Let's look at the Independent's front page, which have got quite a striking photograph of tents up outside the St Paul's Cathedral in London, and a big banner stretched across the front of the cathedral itself, which says capitalism is crushing us. Quite a striking image there. The Independent on the inside really celebrate the movement in their editorial, saying power is being taken back by the people. They say that it's natural that after this kind of financial collapse, people would want to take power back into their own hands. They say that those critics who say the protesters don't have any specific demands are kind of missing the point. They say the occupation in itself is a participatory political democratic movement for people who feel cut out of ordinary parliamentary democracy.
So from spreading across the US, those protests have now spread across the world. Now, what about Britain's other left-leaning paper, The Guardian? They've also got some sympathy for demonstrators.
Yes, let's have a look at that cartoon, which shows protesters being kind of rammed in, kettled, as we say in England, by police, whereas behind the police, bankers are kind of scuttling along across the floor holding collecting tins. So you can see the Guardian's sympathy there quite clearly. They're painting the bankers as receiving public money, or the protesters are kind of receiving bad police treatment. There was an interesting article in the Guardian, actually, saying that if the Occupy movement has some problems, here are some solutions. It suggests that we need to make a radical change in economic policy. They say break up the banks, and instead of using money for quantitative easing and for bailing out banks, give it straight to people, bail out the people. They say write off people's student fees and mortgages if they just can't pay them, write off their personal debts, and then they'll have some money to put back into the economy.
Bail out the people. I like the sound of that. Now, not everyone, though, I imagine, is as enthusiastic about these protests, though.
No, the New York Times have been to speak to some actual Wall Street bankers, anonymously, of course, and they say some not very complimentary things at all about the protesters.
Not really very surprising, is it, though?
No, it's not really, but they call them a ragtag bunch looking for sex, drugs and rock and roll, which you might not think is the most rock and roll thing to do, be camping out in a cold, rainy street, but obviously some bankers think that it is. They also say that while the Wall Street movement call themselves the 99%, they should actually be grateful to the 1% of America's richest, because they're the ones that pay 40% of income tax.
OK, well, that's one way of looking at things. Finally, you're going to tell us about Newsweek. It's looking at a man who's come from obscurity just weeks before the US primaries, the Republican nomination.
Yes, this is the Republican nomination again. There's quite a controversial front page on Newsweek today. It shows Herman Cain, who is, of course, the black candidate in the Republican primary, copying a pose that President Obama became famous for in the last election under the headline, Yes, We Cain. So they're clearly drawing a parallel between two men who don't really have very much in common apart from the colour of their skin. But inside they say that Herman Cain is the anti-Obama. He's a former pizza delivery boss who's gone from having no political background and very little media profile to being near the top of Republican candidates just in the last couple of weeks. But they say that he is really on the hard right of the party, and he's said some things about the civil rights movement that have actually led black activists to call him racist. But nevertheless, even some black activists who really hate his policies, like Jesse Jackson, tell Newsweek that actually they're amazed that America has come so far. There could even be two black candidates facing each other in the presidential election.
His profile raised there in just a few weeks. OK, thank you very much for that look at the international newspapers. Elena Casas.